The power of detachment. Embracing God's plan with unshakable peace. In a world where chaos often seems like the default setting, your calmness may feel like a storm to those who thrive on the turbulence of daily life. Why is it that your serene composure feels like an earthquake to others? Why does your ability to detach from the noise, to walk away without a second thought, seem to upset those around you? The reason is simple. Your detachment is a profound reflection of the peace that God has granted you, and it threatens to expose the fragility of the lives built on control and disorder. This peace, rooted in the trust you place in God's divine plan, is a source of strength that others cannot comprehend, much less tolerate. Your peace becomes their problem not because of its nature, but because it unmasks their struggles and fears. And as unsettling as it may seem, it is in this peace that you stand in direct alignment with God's purpose for your life. As Christians, we are reminded in Philippians 4 verse 7 that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of an unwavering trust in God's sovereignty. When we are at peace with His plan, we become immune to the chaos that others so desperately cling to. It is a peace that disrupts the status quo, not because we seek to control or change others, but because we are so grounded in the truth of God's promises that nothing in the world can shake us. The subtle manipulation of the chaotic. The first indication that your detachment is unsettling others is the way they shift toward covert manipulation. Their attempts to draw you back into their web of chaos begin with subtle jabs, like "must be nice to not care about anything." These comments are not random. They are calculated attempts to make you doubt the strength of your faith and the serenity you have cultivated through your trust in God. In 1 Peter 4 verse 4, we are warned. They are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. These remarks, though seemingly harmless, are rooted in a desire to undermine the peace that God has given you. They cannot comprehend how you remain unshaken in the face of their drama, and their desperation is reflected in these passive-aggressive attacks. But as you continue to stand firm in your faith, refusing to be drawn into the drama, their tactics escalate. Gossip becomes their next weapon. They distort your calm demeanor, labeling it as arrogance or coldness. Their goal is not just to tarnish your character, but to isolate you, to create a version of you that aligns with their insecurities. They want to pull others into their narrative, hoping to break your resolve and force you back into a reactive state. But in reality, these efforts only expose their own fragility. As Christians, we are reminded in Matthew 5 verse 11 to 12, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven." The attacks you face are not a reflection of your weakness, but a sign of your faith's strength. Exclusion, a test of faith. As the manipulation fails, the next phase often involves exclusion. Invitations become scarce, and conversations shift when you enter the room. You may find yourself standing on the outside looking in, but make no mistake, this is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate attempt to make you question the power of your detachment. They want you to feel out of place, to second-guess your decision to walk away from the noise. They want you to conform, to bend to the pressure of their chaos. However, the very act of excluding you is a testament to your untouchable nature. You have become a reflection of something they cannot control, the inner peace that comes from walking in God's will. In Romans 8 verse 31, we are reminded, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" Your detachment is not a weakness. It is a powerful declaration of your trust in God's plan for your life. When others exclude you, they are not punishing you. They are revealing their own inability to understand the peace that comes from placing one's trust entirely in God. The exclusion is not a sign that you are lacking. It is a sign that you have become a reflection of God's sovereignty, a living testimony that there is more to life than the chaos they seek to control. The provocation of chaos. The second sign that your detachment is unsettling others is their relentless attempts to provoke you into reacting. When manipulation fails, they resort to outright chaos. They manufacture drama, stir conflict, and create scenarios designed to break your peace. These are not random outbursts or misunderstandings. They are deliberate traps, meant to pull you into their world of confusion and strife. But your refusal to engage in these storms only serves to magnify their frustration. You are a living testimony that peace is possible, even in the most turbulent of circumstances. In Matthew 5, verse 9, Jesus teaches, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." When you choose to remain calm in the face of chaos, you are embodying the very spirit of Christ. Your refusal to be dragged into their drama is not a rejection of them, but a commitment to a higher purpose. You are not just avoiding conflict. You are actively choosing to be a peacemaker in a world that thrives on division. Their attempts to provoke you become more desperate as they push boundaries, test your patience, and provoke you to defend yourself. They will create personal scenarios, distort your words, and challenge your values in an effort to force an emotional reaction. But what they fail to understand is that your peace is not dependent on them or their actions. It is rooted in the trust you have in God's sovereignty, in the belief that He is in control of all things. Psalm 46 verse 10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." When we remain still in the face of provocation, we are acknowledging God's control and refusing to be swayed by the forces of chaos. Strength and detachment. The more they try to provoke you, the more they reveal their own desperation. Every failed attempt to break your peace strengthens your resolve. Their actions speak more about their inability to control their own emotions than they do about your detachment. They are grasping at something they cannot touch, your inner peace. And when their efforts fail, it becomes clear to everyone, including them, that the power they seek to wield over you is never real. As Christians, we understand that true peace comes not from avoiding conflict, but from trusting in God's divine plan. Proverbs 3 verse 5 to 6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." Your peace is not of this world. It is a direct result of your relationship with God and your belief that He is working all things for your good. In the end, the peace that others find so unsettling is not a sign of weakness, but a powerful declaration of your faith. It is a reflection of your trust in God's plan and a testimony to the world that true peace is found not in chaos, but in surrendering to His will. When others react to your peace, know that it is not your calm that disturbs them. It is the fact that you have found something they have yet to discover, the unshakable, unyielding peace that comes from trusting in God's perfect timing and His plan for your life. Detachment is a force that unnerves people because it challenges everything they rely on. In a world addicted to reactions and validation, your ability to remain unbothered feels both threatening and magnetic. It stands in stark contrast to the chaos that others perpetuate through constant emotional upheaval and attention-seeking behavior. They hate it because it strips them of control, yet they crave it because, deep down, they know it's the kind of power they lack. Detachment isn't just a state of being, it's a power in itself. It's the strength to stay grounded without being swayed by the external noise, and that makes others feel vulnerable. When you detach, you deny them the satisfaction of knowing how they can affect you. It challenges their assumptions and puts a spotlight on their own weaknesses. Detachment is a mirror reflecting their insecurities and unspoken desires. It forces them to confront the truth they've buried deep inside. They want the freedom you possess, but they're unwilling to let go of the chains that bind them. These chains could be their need for constant approval, their dependence on external validation, or their need to control others' emotions to feel secure. Your ability to stand alone without clinging to these things makes them uncomfortable because it highlights just how dependent they are. The first reason why people hate detachment is that it highlights their own dependencies. Your emotional independence is a sharp contrast to the chaos they tether themselves to, and that contrast is impossible to ignore. When you refuse to react, It exposes how much they rely on others for validation, attention, or control. Your detachment forces them to face their own emotional instability, as they are accustomed to seeking outside sources for validation and reassurance. In your calmness, they see their own lack of self-mastery and feel threatened. The stark contrast between your emotional independence and their dependency triggers resentment because it reveals their vulnerability. They resent you because your calmness forces them to confront the aspects of themselves they would rather leave untouched. But beneath that resentment lies something deeper: envy. They admire the strength it takes to detach, to walk away from chaos, to live unshackled by others' expectations. Yet, their admiration is laced with bitterness, as your detachment exposes the weaknesses they hide from the world. They wish they could emulate your strength, but they are not ready to relinquish the emotional ties that keep them stuck in cycles of dependency. They throw these accusations because they need to frame your detachment as a problem, something wrong with you, rather than acknowledging the discomfort it stirs within them. To admit that your calmness highlights their chaos would be too much for their pride to handle. It would force them to admit that their emotional instability is the real issue, not your refusal to engage. By calling you arrogant, they attempt to drag you down to their level, hoping you'll feel compelled to prove them wrong. They want to bring you down from your place of emotional strength, to pull you into their chaotic world where they can regain control. By labeling you cold, they want to guilt you into rejoining their cycle of neediness and drama, to make you feel responsible for their emotional turmoil. They want to make you believe that your detachment is a flaw, a defect, when in reality it is a powerful choice, a conscious decision to protect your energy from being drained by external forces. The third sign that your detachment is pissing people off is the sudden flood of accusations and labels hurled in your direction. Cold-hearted, aloof, arrogant. These words aren't random. They're calculated attempts to discredit you, to paint your calm as cruelty and your boundaries as betrayal. They can't stand that you've reclaimed your energy, so they twist your independence into something negative. It is easier for them to label you as cold or arrogant than to admit that they are unable to manipulate you emotionally. Your detachment forces them to reckon with the fact that they cannot control you, and this realization drives them to desperation. These labels serve as shields, excuses for their own inability to accept that your refusal to engage isn't a flaw, but a choice rooted in strength. They cannot accept that someone could be indifferent to their emotional chaos without being somehow deficient. They need to make you the problem, not the mirror that reflects their own discomfort. What they fail to realize is that these accusations only reveal their frustration. They can't reach you, can't shake you, and it drives them mad. When they call you aloof, what they truly mean is that they're envious of your ability to remain unbothered. Every label they throw at you is proof of your power, proof that your detachment is untouchable. And deep down, they know it. That's why they lash out with words, because they've already lost the fight to pull you back in. The second reason why people hate detachment is that it removes their power over you, leaving them exposed and frustrated. When you refuse to react, you disrupt the game they've mastered, manipulating emotions to control outcomes. They thrive on creating emotional drama, knowing that they can draw people in with guilt, fear, or anger. But when you withhold those reactions, their strategies crumble. They're used to people feeding into their emotional manipulation, giving them the satisfaction of knowing they have power over others. When you refuse to engage, you leave them powerless. Detachment becomes a shield they cannot penetrate, a silent declaration that their tactics have no hold on you. It's not just unsettling to them, it's infuriating. They hate that you've made yourself untouchable. Manipulators thrive on emotional chaos, pulling strings to see who will dance to their tune. But when you detach, you deny them the satisfaction of pulling you into their web. They'll test you, provoke you, hoping to spark the reaction that gives them leverage. Yet your stillness, your refusal to engage, robs them of that power. They can't manipulate someone who is at peace with themselves and unwilling to be dragged into their emotional game. This paradox of resentment and admiration fuels their frustration. They can't decide whether they want to tear you down or learn from you. They criticize your distance, your refusal to react, but secretly, they wish they could emulate it. They wish they could detach from the emotional chaos around them the way you do, but they're too tied to their need for control, validation, and external approval. Your ability to stay grounded without clinging to external approval is a threat to the fragile structures people have built their lives upon. It challenges their need for constant validation and their addiction to emotional highs and lows. Detachment isn't just a choice, it's a power, and that power terrifies those who haven't yet learned how to wield it for themselves. They are afraid of losing control, of being exposed, and of confronting their own inability to achieve the same emotional independence you have. This message isn't for everyone. If you don't feel it, that's fine, move along. But if you felt it deep in your bones, you'll know this is for you. Here's to the chosen ones, the ones who don't fit in, the ones who see beyond the veil, the ones who've been told to stay tired, to settle, to conform, but never could. They aren't interested in what's ordinary. They aren't here to follow someone else's rules. They're the light in the dark, the storm that shatters illusions, the unshakable, the unstoppable, the untouchable. While the world is busy running in circles, they're walking their own path, alone if they must. Not for the applause, not for the approval, but because it's who they are. They're the ones who have been through hardship and come out stronger on the other side, the ones who take what was meant to destroy them and transform it into something divine, something sacred. They carry wisdom that can't be taught, only earned through trials and tribulations, through standing alone when no one else dared to. Their journey is not about fitting in or playing by the rules of others. It's about forging their own path and walking it with unshakable confidence. If this resonates with you, if you've always felt like an outsider or someone who simply could not conform to societal expectations, then it's time to find your people. The Obsidian Inner Order is the only place of its kind, a sanctuary where over 400 like-minded souls gather to share wisdom, connect on a deeper level, and transform. It is not a place for games or masks, but for truth, raw and unfiltered. If you are ready to embrace your power, to step into your authenticity and live your truth unapologetically, then you'll know exactly where to find us. The link is in the description. And when you're ready, we'll be waiting for you with open arms, ready to walk this transformative journey alongside you. Your detachment triggers deep emotional reactions in others because it feels like rejection to those who depend on external validation for their sense of self-worth. The irony is that your independence isn't just a choice. It's a refusal to participate in the unspoken game of emotional dependency that so many are trapped in. For those who measure their worth by the attention and reactions of others, your calmness, your ability to remain centered, feels like abandonment. It forces them to confront a truth that is uncomfortable, even painful, that their sense of self is tied to something they cannot control. Your response: they don't know how to cope with the idea that you don't need them to define you, that you aren't waiting for their approval or for any kind of validation. This truth is far more devastating to them than they're willing to admit because it exposes the fragility of their own emotional state. Your detachment doesn't just reflect your independence. It reflects their dependency, their need for external validation. Your calm demeanor speaks volumes without uttering a word, and it cuts deeper than they could have anticipated. They don't know how to process someone who doesn't engage in their emotional chaos, who refuses to mirror back their confusion and instability. To them, this is a kind of rejection, and they can't comprehend how you have mastered the emotional clarity that eludes them. They project their own fears and insecurities onto you, calling you heartless, distant, or uncaring, because they are unable to understand how anyone could exist outside of their emotional manipulations. The more you remain composed and detached, the more their internal turmoil intensifies, and the more they despise you for it. But their frustration isn't really with you, it's with themselves. They resent your calmness because it forces them to confront their own chaos. Your detachment doesn't just shield you, it exposes them. It reveals the depth of their emotional entanglement and their inability to rise above the need for approval, control, or validation. This reflection is something they cannot escape. no matter how hard they try to project their anger onto you. You have become the mirror they cannot avoid, a reminder of their own weakness, their inability to stand alone. They may try to turn the tables by accusing you of being indifferent or superior, but deep down, they know that your strength is something they lack. They see in you a power that they long for, but are too afraid to claim for themselves. The third reason why people hate detachment is that it acts as a mirror to their own insecurities, chaos, and lack of control. Your calmness isn't just a neutral force. It's an unrelenting spotlight that forces them to face everything they've been avoiding about themselves. When you refuse to engage in their drama or validate their need for control, it forces them to confront the instability they've been trying to ignore. They have spent their lives burying their fears, their lack of emotional clarity, and their need for constant validation under layers of noise and distractions. But your detachment brings it all to the surface. Your refusal to participate in their emotional games makes it impossible for them to avoid their own inner conflict. This dynamic creates a volatile mix of resentment and envy. They despise the discomfort your detachment brings, but secretly, deep down, they crave the peace it represents. They want what you have, the emotional clarity, the strength, the peace, but attaining it would mean facing the very truths they've been running from their entire lives. They would have to acknowledge their own dependency, their own fear of being alone, and the fragile foundation on which their sense of self rests. So instead of confronting these truths, they project their anger and frustration onto you, attempting to make you feel guilty for simply existing in a space of calm. They label you as indifferent, superior, or uncaring in an attempt to justify their own discomfort. But the truth is, their frustration isn't really with you. It's with themselves. You are simply the catalyst for their self-reflection, the one who forces them to face what they have spent so long avoiding. They hate you for showing them the truth of their own weakness, for highlighting the very things they would rather leave buried. And yet, despite their hatred, they cannot help but envy the strength you exude. Friedrich Nietzsche once remarked, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." Your detachment is that struggle in action, a quiet rebellion against the collective emotional chaos that consumes those around you. They hate it because it forces them to confront their own entanglement, their inability to rise above the need for approval, control, or validation. Your calmness reveals their dependency, their fear of standing alone, and that reflection unnerves them. They sense in you a strength they long for, but lack the courage to claim for themselves. Detachment acts as a catalyst for growth, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Your refusal to engage in toxicity is a mirror they can't ignore, forcing them to confront the behaviors they've been avoiding. Your detachment unsettles them because it's a reminder of their lack of control, not just over you, but over themselves. What they hate most is also what they admire, your ability to stand apart, unshaken, a silent force that refuses to be manipulated. Though they lash out, the truth is inescapable. They want the freedom you've claimed, but fear the work it takes to achieve it. Detachment grants you an undeniable edge, allowing you to focus with precision and produce results that others can only aspire to. Emotional independence clears the clutter from your mind, freeing up the energy you'd otherwise waste on overthinking, people-pleasing, or reacting to others' chaos. With that space, your creativity flourishes, your ideas sharpen, and your actions become deliberate. When you're not consumed by emotional noise, you gain the clarity to prioritize what truly matters, making you unstoppable in your pursuit of growth and success. In relationships, detachment transforms how you connect with others. You no longer attract people looking to exploit your energy or manipulate your emotions. Instead, you draw those who respect your boundaries, value your independence, and seek genuine connection. Detachment doesn't mean you're closed off. It means you're no longer willing to sacrifice your peace for relationships rooted in dependence or control. The connections you foster are healthier, stronger, and more fulfilling because they're built on mutual respect, not manipulation. In Greek mythology, Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, embodied peace and detachment. choosing a life free from the chaos of Mount Olympus. While other gods thrived on conflict, drama, and the pursuit of power, Hestia remained steadfast, tending to the hearth that symbolized stability and balance. Her independence was both her strength and a source of frustration for those who couldn't understand her refusal to engage in their rivalries. Her calmness highlighted their turbulence, and her choice to remain uninvolved left them bewildered. Hestia's story is a testament to the quiet power of detachment amidst the storms of others. When life throws stress and pressure your way, detachment becomes your greatest armor. You thrive where others crumble because your emotional clarity allows you to approach challenges with composure and strategy. Detachment doesn't make you indifferent. It makes you resilient. You can assess situations without being overwhelmed, act decisively without hesitation, and adapt when circumstances demand it. Where others drown in the weight of stress, you rise above it, untethered and focused. Detachment isn't just a tool. It's a superpower that amplifies your productivity, enriches your relationships, and fortifies your strength in the face of life's most intense moments. Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird embodies the power of calm detachment. Confronted with hatred, prejudice, and hostility, he remains composed, refusing to be swayed by the chaos around him. His focus on justice and truth allows him to act with clarity and purpose, even when others crumble under pressure. Atticus doesn't react impulsively to insults or intimidation. Instead, he channels his energy into what truly matters, doing what is right. This detachment doesn't signify indifference, but demonstrates a profound inner strength that keeps him grounded amidst turmoil. Like Atticus, your detachment is not weakness but a shield, enabling you to navigate life's storms with unshakable resolve. It empowers you to see clearly through noise, rise above emotional manipulation, and stay focused on what matters most. Just as his composure unnerves those who oppose him, your calm presence highlights your strength and unsettles those reliant on control and chaos. As Sun Tzu writes in The Art of War, appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to places where you are not expected. Your detachment is your greatest strategy, granting you the ability to remain unreadable and unshakable. When people can't predict your moves, they're left scrambling, reacting to shadows instead of reality. Your calm disrupts their need for control, and your refusal to engage on their terms keeps you steps ahead. Detachment isn't just peace. It's a tactical advantage that forces others to confront their own chaos while you remain untouchable and firmly in control. Detachment as a path to spiritual growth, trusting God's plan and breaking generational cycles. In life, we often face situations that prompt us to react. Whether it's an argument with a loved one, a disagreement at work, or an encounter with someone who thrives on creating chaos, the urge to defend ourselves, to speak up, or to set things right can feel overwhelming. But in moments like these, the strength to remain silent and not engage in the storm can carry profound spiritual significance. From a Christian perspective, the ability to detach from the chaos around us is not merely a passive act, but a purposeful choice to trust in God's plan, to break free from the cycles of sin, and to cultivate peace in the midst of turmoil. The Bible teaches us that there is power in silence and restraint. Proverbs 17 verse 28 reminds us, even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. There is a deeper wisdom in detachment, one that invites us to examine our hearts and our motivations, and to trust that God is in control of every situation. When we choose not to react impulsively, we create space for the Holy Spirit to work in us and through us, transforming our responses to the world. Our silence becomes a form of spiritual surrender, a quiet declaration that we are placing our trust not in our ability to change others, but in God's sovereignty. This kind of detachment, while seemingly simple, requires great strength and courage. In the world, it is often seen as a weakness to remain unmoved in the face of provocation or manipulation. But from the standpoint of Christian faith, detachment is a reflection of true strength. the strength that comes from God. Psalm 46 verse 10 tells us, "Be still and know that I am God." This stillness is not a form of passivity, but an active submission to God's will. By not reacting in the heat of the moment, we are choosing to step back from the dysfunction around us and trust that God's timing is perfect, even when it feels like the world is spinning out of control. Breaking generational patterns is one of the most powerful forms of spiritual growth. When we choose to detach from toxic cycles, whether it's patterns of communication, ways of relating, or unhealthy emotional responses, we are creating an opportunity for God to do something new in our lives. Jesus called us to be agents of transformation in the world, and this begins with our own hearts. In Matthew 5 verse 9, he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." Detaching from chaos is not an escape from the world, but an active commitment to bring peace and healing where there is brokenness. By breaking free from the destructive patterns we inherited, we set a new standard, one that is rooted in the peace of Christ. Our actions, no matter how small, ripple outward, influencing those around us in ways we may never fully understand. By stepping away from cycles of conflict, refusing to take on burdens that are not ours, and maintaining healthy boundaries, we challenge others to consider their own behavior. We model the possibility of transformation. Even though some may resist or misunderstand our detachment, others may begin to reflect on their own lives and seek change. Galatians 6 verse 7 to 8 teaches us, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. When we sow peace, we create the conditions for growth, not only for ourselves but for others as well." Detachment, therefore, is not an invitation to withdraw from relationships, but a challenge to engage in a more profound and intentional way. It is not about avoiding responsibility, but about taking responsibility for our own emotional health. It is about saying no to the toxic energy that others may try to project onto us and saying yes to God's invitation to be a vessel of peace. The Apostle Paul's words in Romans 12 verse 18, "If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all," remind us that we cannot control the actions of others, but we can control our own responses. And sometimes, the most peaceful response is to not engage in the drama at all. In the process of detachment, we hold up a mirror to those around us, one that they may not want to look into, but which forces them to face the truth. When we refuse to react to their provocations, we strip away the distractions that allow them to avoid self-reflection. We become the silent challenge to their patterns, forcing them to confront what they might rather keep hidden. Jesus himself demonstrated this in his own life. When he was falsely accused and brought before Pilate, he chose silence over defense, embodying the humility and trust that we are called to emulate. In the Gospel of John, we see that Pilate marveled at Jesus' quiet strength, saying, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" John 19 verse 10. Jesus responded not with words, but with unwavering faith in God's plan, which ultimately led to the salvation of the world. Like the famous detective Sherlock Holmes, who was known for his ability to detach from emotional distractions in order to focus on the facts, we too are called to cultivate the skill of observing without being swept up in the emotional drama of others. Holmes would step back from the chaos around him, observing with calm detachment, so that he could discern the truth and act with clarity. In the same way, detachment allows us to observe the world around us without being caught up in its turbulence. It enables us to stay focused on what truly matters, our relationship with God and the peace he offers us. Proverbs 4 verse 25 to 27 says, "Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure." Detachment helps us keep our eyes fixed on Christ and our purpose in him. Detachment is not a form of indifference. It does not mean we withdraw from the world or abandon our responsibility to love others. Rather, it is a way of mastering our emotions, of recognizing the manipulations of others without letting them control us, and of maintaining inner peace through the power of the Holy Spirit. Jesus calls us to love our neighbors, but he also calls us to protect our hearts from the chaos and toxicity of the world. In Philippians 4 verse 7, Paul writes, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Through detachment, we invite God's peace to guard our hearts, allowing us to engage in the world in a more loving, compassionate, and purposeful way. In conclusion, detachment is a form of spiritual strength, rooted in faith and trust in God's timing and plan. It invites us to break free from destructive cycles and to live in peace, not as passive observers, but as active agents of transformation. Through detachment, we align our will with God's will, showing the world that true peace is not found in controlling others, but in surrendering to God's control. By cultivating this spiritual discipline, we invite others to experience the freedom and transformation that comes from trusting God above all else. Eleanor Roosevelt once remarked, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." In the realm of faith, this concept takes on a deeper spiritual meaning. As Christians, our power lies in our trust and surrender to God's plan for us. When we face trials, persecution, or the hostility of others, our response is rooted in grace and patience, for we know that God is in control. In times of distress, we are called not to engage in the chaos, but to remain steadfast in the peace that comes from trusting in God's timing and sovereignty. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a demonstration of spiritual strength and resilience. The Apostle Paul reminds us in Romans 8 verse 28 that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Our detachment from the turmoil of the world reflects our faith that God is orchestrating everything according to his will, even when it feels as though we are under attack. This sense of peace in the face of adversity does not come from ourselves, but from the Holy Spirit, who helps us maintain calm in moments of unrest. Just as Jesus exhibited grace and peace amidst rejection and hatred, we are called to mirror his example by responding with kindness, even when others seek to provoke us. Detachment, in this sense, is not about disengagement, but about placing our trust completely in God's guidance. It means recognizing that not every battle is ours to fight. As Jesus taught in Matthew 10 verse 14, "If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet." We must discern when to step away and protect our peace, not because we are weak, but because we are following the example of our Savior, who knew when to withdraw in order to fulfill his greater purpose. Our peace is a testament to the strength we derive from God. It is a declaration that we are not moved by the shifting circumstances or the opinions of others. The Apostle James writes in James 1 verse 19 to 20, "Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." By choosing peace over anger, we align ourselves with God's righteousness, showing the world that our worth and identity are found not in the approval of others, but in the unwavering love of God. Hate and resentment are not about us. They are projections of the inner struggles of others. As Proverbs 19 verse 11 teaches, "A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense." In choosing to detach from the emotional chaos, we free ourselves from the burdens of others' insecurities. This detachment is not about indifference, but about freedom, a freedom to live in the peace that surpasses understanding. Philippians 4 verse 7. It is a reminder that when we remain grounded in our faith, we become a living testament to the power of God's presence in our lives. Therefore, let us embrace the strength of detachment, understanding that it is not a denial of others, but a declaration of God's sovereignty over our lives. When we remain rooted in his truth, we are liberated from the chaos of this world, becoming instruments of his peace and grace in a troubled world.